So at this point, I think we're all well aware that big tech and big social media companies have colluded with the government to shut down free speech. This was done leading up to the 2020 election and all throughout the pandemic. But what's breaking right now is that there's new reports that are showing the extent of this collusion between these companies and the government. I'm going to show you a recent clip of Josh Hawley where he's going to expose the fact that Facebook spent untold amounts of money censoring conservative voices while at the same time allowing human traffickers to have their way on Facebook.
This case filed by my home state, Missouri versus Biden, landmark First Amendment case, in which two federal courts, federal district court and a federal court of appeals, have found that Facebook, among others, actively coordinated with the present administration to censor First Amendment protected speech. Not this garbage that is not protected by anything in our Constitution, but First Amendment protected speech. Here's what gets me. What the courts found, this is in the record, this is factual findings, is that Facebook devoted all kinds of resources and people, actual human people, to doing things like monitoring posts on COVID-19 vaccine efficacy. There's one example of a parent in my home state of Missouri who wanted to post something about a school board meeting. Facebook used human moderators to go and take down that post. That was important. That has to come down. We can't have them posting about school board meetings, for heaven's sake. But the things that your daughter experienced, this ring of pedophiles, rings plural, that Facebook just can't find the time for. They just don't have the resources for it. That we just have to leave to, let the market have its effect. Let AI do its job. We just don't have the resources for it. They had plenty of resources to censor First Amendment speech. No resources to protect our children. Absolutely unconscionable.
Now, I took some time to read through many of the liberal comments on this. I wanted to see where the other side would be coming from, and I found zero comments of anyone on the left side of things refuting any of these statements. Nearly everyone agrees that this is true, whether you're on the left or the right. We know that social media, Facebook, and big tech companies were in fact colluding with the government. They were shutting down free speech. The difference is that the left thinks that this was all for the good, for the better. This was the right thing to do during the pandemic, although much of the things that they censored have now come out to actually be true, and the things that they were allowing to be told were the real misinformation. But what the left commenters started to do was, rather than refute the facts, they just started attacking different conservative organizations or people. Like, so for example, they would say, oh, what about the Catholic Church? What about their history? Or they would directly attack Josh Hawley himself. Now, Jim Jordan has done a really good job in posting a lot of this information on Twitter. So I wanted to go through some of the actual censorship that is being identified from these big tech, big social media companies, and the names of the people who were censored at this time. So going down, you can see bombshell report on the censorship industrial complex, and scrolling down, the federal government disinformation experts at universities, big tech, and others worked together through the Election Integrity Partnership to monitor and censor Americans' speech. And when you scroll down, he actually starts to list who was targeted, Americans of all political stripes. So you have at Real Donald Trump, Senator Thomas Tillis, Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee, Sean Hannity. Even going down here, we see Newsmax, Michelle Malkin, Rubin Report, Chanel Ryan. And what are some of the things that they were censoring? I mean, if I click on this, they censored this. Georgia counties using same software as Michigan counties also encountered glitch. I mean, even though it was just a factual statement, they also censored this. Thank you for this historic victory. This is Tom Tillis. Thank you for this historic victory, North Carolina. Looking forward to 6 more years of fighting for you and your family in the U.S. Senate. Censored. Absolutely censored. So if you were a conservative, you were targeted by these social media sites in collusion with the government. Like I said, the big breaking news now is that these reports are now all coming out. They're starting to get this information, and there's going to start to be more. And you're going to realize how truly corrupt the process was leading into 2020 and during the pandemic. These people know exactly what they were doing. They were manipulating the entire process. I mean, they single-handedly, through this censorship and ballot harvesting, absolutely won this election for Joe Biden. If they did not stop stories like the Hunter laptop story or stop conservatives from sharing information that was valid and important for others to hear, there's no way the public opinion would have been as favorable for Joe Biden. And then, of course, on top of that, all of the ballot harvesting. I mean, all of these states during the pandemic that loosened up all of their laws and their regulations, and they allowed so much to happen that normally shouldn't happen. Protections against some of the things that could possibly have happened. I mean, I don't want to get myself into any trouble here, but we definitely know that there was a lot of harvesting of ballots happening. But the question most people have is, what are we going to do now? How are we going to stop this? Now that we have these reports, what are we going to do to end this? And I really think that the government needs to put forth some legislative action that prevents this from happening again. Any sort of collusion from big tech, social media companies, and the government, there really shouldn't be any interaction at all. There should be no communication between these two entities in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the government can have oversight, they can regulate, which is what the government normally does, as long as it's smart regulation. But to have communication, to try to say, hey, you better watch out for this misinformation, you better not allow that to be reported, we're seeing things like this, hey, can you pull that down? That should never happen. There should be no compromise there. If you're on the left or the right, no one should be in agreement with that ever. That is a bad thing when you have businesses and government and media all working together with the same united goal. That is a terrible thing. And when that happens, you start to see real misinformation put forward. You start to see real censorship. You start to see people losing their rights of freedom of speech. And that's exactly what we saw. And that needs to end. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Leave them in the comments below. I'll catch you on the next one.